A typical thing would be when I was about 15 or 16, sitting down with my high school music theory teacher, Bill Westcott, and he'd sit down at the piano, and you have to imagine I've got hair down to my shoulders and, you know, motorcycle boots, and I just play Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and Hendrix. But he took the time to say, sit down and listen to this, and he'd play me some things, and he'd say, this is called this, and these composers used it in this situation to get this feeling out of the audience. And then he'd play something else, and then slowly he would get through my teenage brain and say, these things are things that you can memorize. There are names. For hundreds of years, composers have been teaching themselves this, and this is the language we use to make music for people. And this is how you put music to the feelings that you have. And I was amazed at that. I really took to it, and I started singing scales all the time. I had these little flashcards. This is before computers and stuff. I date myself, but I had these little flashcards, and I would write numerically the scales, because I don't have perfect pitch, so I was taught relative pitch. And on the back would be the name, Phrygian dominant, Aeolian dominant, stuff like that. And I would just try to memorize from not only what it sounded like, but also what it felt like to generate the sound, which was a thing that I had to trust was the right thing to do when it was suggested by my teacher to do that. So you have to and then I started doing it with the guitar. I'd sit down at the piano if my family situation allowed it, and I'd hit a low note, and I'd start to play a scale and notice how I felt when I played a certain scale while this low note was ringing. This was also a very important lesson in how we as an audience receive notes. We always relate the upper notes in relation to the lower note. We receive that as the tonic. We interpret it that way. And this is also a really good lesson, because that's how you build tension and release, is by the relationship between the notes, the spaces between them. So eventually you will build a library of opinions and feelings about all of these tools. And there are only maybe 17 or 18 scales, I think, that you can play for a Western audience that they perceive as a separate scale. There are plenty more. There are thousands of them mathematically, but they don't really do very much. They're too subtle for our ears, you know. And we deal mainly with just 12 notes here. Western music, not really that interested in microtonal stuff. So it's not really a lot of scales and notes when you think about it. So I would say to young students all the time, maybe it's going to take 3 weeks of hell of you trying to understand this, but once it's over, you'll never intellectually think about it again. It simply becomes part of you, like riding a bike or learning how to throw a baseball or something. You move on to the subtleties of the action and never about the intellectual building blocks of it. But before you do it, you will not understand it at all. It's like somebody speaking a foreign language to you, and you don't know one word. So how do you know what they're saying? You know what I mean? So it's really important for musicians to know that.